Well, as always, your questions and comments are welcome in the chat window for live Q&A, which will follow today's high-intensity tech training. It's the fourth installment in our State of the Union series. Today, we dive deep into the explosive growth of wireless services and examine how today's critical connectivity options are shaped by network convergence, transformative impact of AI and IoT. We've got a panel of experts to rival any other you could put together. Today's panel of experts is comprised of Brinton Gunderson. He is Field Solutions Engineer at Teleris. Josh Hazelhorst, Senior Field Solutions Engineer. And all of it hosted by Teleris VP of Advanced Networking and Mobility, Graham Scott. Hey, Graham. Everybody, welcome back to our Tuesday call. It's good to see you guys.
Yeah, thanks so much. Really glad to be here. It's been a little bit since I've been on the call,
It
so
has.
good to come back and be here. Really appreciate the intro, Doug. We're going to go ahead and jump right in here. So 2024 was a big year for the advanced network practice. Why? Well, it was our first year, right? We kind of our inception year for advanced network was 2024. So I want to spend a little bit of time breaking down why we added advanced network to the advanced solutions category, talk about how we see advanced network and mobility and all of these other aspects bringing together, and then talk a little bit with our panel of experts, Josh and Britton, about what we saw this year, what kind of trends we're noticing, and what we expect in 2025. So go ahead and take that slide down, Chandler. We're going to go ahead and move to this one. So why advanced network, right? Why did we bring that? Well, as we all know, in this industry, it's extremely important to stay on top of new trends and new technology. And we've done that really well here at Teleris over the years. Everybody remembers the cable rocket ship from about 10 years ago. Teleris was one of the first to jump on that and understand the power and impact that cable was going to have on the business landscape. And as a result of that, our partners and Teleris were very successful in that space. Continuing that, we saw the trends with advanced solutions, and a lot of this was due to feedback from you, our partners and tech advisors, telling us what you were seeing out there in the field. And so as a result of that, we developed practices around each of those areas, cloud, CX, and of course, cybersecurity. So we've been very successful in those areas. Again, thanks primarily to you as our TAs and partners trusting us with your business and your opportunities. And those practices have grown tremendously, as you've heard from many of my colleagues over the past two HITT sessions that we've done. What we found, though, is as we continued to grow, network was also seeing major changes, right? As we've noticed with these advanced solutions require advanced networks. Network deals were getting bigger, they were getting more complex, and there was more going on. Not to mention, technology was also developing in this space very rapidly. Things like SD-WAN that had been around for a little while are continuing to evolve. And of course, the emergence of SASE over the last couple of years and what that means for the network world. So as a result of that, we decided to put some additional focus on the advanced network space and really kind of bring a little bit of discipline and educational content around it because you as our TAs asked for it. So one of the most common questions I get when I'm out in the field is, Graham, how do you combine network, mobility, and IoT into one practice? Well, actually, it's pretty easy if you look at it from the point of view of the customer, okay? If we step back and put our customer hats on, what do customers want from their network? Well, they want a seamless experience, okay? I want the ability to go from my terminal or my desktop to my laptop to my mobile phone and even my IoT devices like watches and wearables and have access to the same applications and be able to do the same things that I can do on any one of them. So that seamless experience is what kind of drives the culmination of all of these practices together. So bringing network, mobility, and IoT all from the perspective of the user wanting access to their critical applications and anything regardless of where they are. So things like network assets and infrastructure, and that would include, large data pipes, broadband circuits, things like switches, routers, all of that infrastructure combined with our mobile devices, right? Our phones are such a big part of everything we do these days. Having access to our applications on those devices is super critical. And then, of course, IoT devices and data, starting with things like wearables, like I want to be able to get emails on my watch when I'm on the go. And then, of course, into the business world, IoT is becoming a big part of what's going on. And the data that's being collected by those IoT devices need transport to where it can be used somewhere for business purposes. So again, that's where that IoT world meshes with network. And then, of course, we've seen a whole emergence of a bunch of what we call alternative connectivity, things like 5G, 4G, and of course, satellite is a big deal. And then our wireless products, as I mentioned, 5G, 4G becoming a bigger part of the picture. And of course, no session would be complete without talking about AI. And of course, one of the areas we're seeing a huge impact with that is in the IoT space, creating more realistic solutions around IoT. So all of those things together are elements that our business customers are using in their environment to deliver results for their business. And they want access to all of that in the same way across multiple platforms. So that's where you get this idea of bringing all of these things together into one practice, looking at it from the perspective of the user. So hopefully that makes sense. Give you guys a little background of where we're going and where the idea for the advanced network practice came from. Again, we are seeing a huge amount of growth in this area as the demand for these advanced solutions like CX, large contact center, cloud continues to grow. The demands on the network also continue to grow. And as a result of that, we needed to put a little more focus on it, and we did that in 2024. So Chandler, I'm going to get you to go ahead and close that screen there. And let's bring both Josh and Brenton up here. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us today. Why don't you just sort of touch a little bit on what I just said, where you guys are seeing this convergence, and talk a little bit about the kinds of deals you guys are seeing over the last year and how those have grown. Josh, let's start with you.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people on this call know that, I'm passionate about the SD-WAN world, right? But like the slide you were showing, right? What people need to realize is everything's connected to everything. And when we're talking tech, when we're talking stack, when we're talking cloud, we're talking applications, it's just a giant puzzle piece. They all fit together, but they need to fit together in a specific way, right? When we're talking about, okay, we're going to start doing things like SD-WAN to do site-to-site connectivity, or we're going to do things like SD-WAN to do things like site-to-cloud or multi-cloud connectivity, right? Let's replace MPLS, or let's take applications and put them in 100% uptime scenarios, right? People think, okay, that's SD-WAN, right? SD-WAN is the multi-site connectivity piece and the application control piece. SD-WAN is not a thing anymore because of the convergence of all of this stuff, because of simplification and elegance and building an entire route, switch, firewall, next-gen cybersecurity in these all-in-one platforms. SD-WAN is no longer a thing. It's a marketing term to get people to buy things that they don't necessarily need to buy. The game changer is everything you're talking about is all about the application. For the end user, for that customer, it's the business critical applications that make me money. You talk about mobility, you talk about IoT. IoT sensors need to behave in a totally different methodology as, say, like CCAS or real-time voice, right? That transport can be different. I don't need to go out and get, multiple 10 gig pipes to support IoT devices. I can run those over a different mode of transport. SD-WAN, the origination of it, we're talking things like forward error correction, dynamic path selection, teaching business critical applications how I need them to behave in real time, right? But then the theory of split tunneling comes in of, okay, I'm gonna give locations local internet breakout, but I'm also doing a hub and spoke for, my databases or my workloads at my local data center, my own, right? But now there's a new theory, what's called network splicing, not creating VLANs and guest Wi-Fi and stuff like this, but network splicing is now a new term to confuse everybody on the planet because, oh my God, the SD-WAN platform I bought last year doesn't do network splicing. Stop it. What network splicing is now doing is it's saying, okay, which application needs to perform and behave in a different way than other applications? And now, if I'm not a network genius, I don't know how I want Office 365, Zoom to behave, five nines to behave, or whatever. But now with the advent of AI in some of these platforms, right, the SD-WAN platform will learn by machine learning and AI how those business critical applications need to behave and will automatically tune how they're doing those application reroutes so the customer doesn't have to do these massive configurations, right? We see a lot of guys out there going, I'm going to buy Cisco, I'm going to buy Palo, I'm going to buy Fortinet. And then they get stuck with the, oh my God, I didn't know I had to do this full configuration of every single application. Well, yeah, you do in some of those platforms, but in today's world, there's a lot of SD-WAN platforms out there that will learn those applications by themselves. But here's the rub, and this is where I'm going to bring in Britain. This is what we've been seeing an absolute ton is, okay, throw bandwidth at it. Give me a 5 gig, 10 gig, 100 meg, whatever it happens to be. Wait a minute. To me, SD-WAN, the actual transport, I don't care, right? Because the application is going to determine the best path in real time, and it's going to reroute around anomalies. However, what are those applications? How does that workload look like? How do they need to behave? What are the requirements of that specific application? Britton and I work on big deals all the time to where it's a, hey man, go get me a 10 gig point to point. And then Britton comes over the top and says, are you sure? What applications? What's the workload? What's that data look like? How does it need to behave? Because maybe a 10 gig, maybe you want a 10 gig transport, but maybe 10 gig point to point wasn't correct. Maybe 10 gig wave was more correct. Unfortunately, agents and end users themselves, they're not going to know the difference, right? So the easy button, hey, Britton, this guy wants sticks, he wants transport, this is his use case, what's the best way? Britton, we're working on a couple big ones right now to where that was the agent request, right? It's, hey, man, give me some point-to-point 10 gig sticks. And then Britton comes over the top, advanced networking, right? What does that mean? What's the data? What's the transport? How does it need to behave? Where are the locations? Are you adding locations, right? Britton, can you talk to that?
Yeah, and I mean, it really comes back to the customer requirements, and I like how Kobe puts it. Follow the data, follow what the applications need, and I think over the last 7 years we've seen SD-WAN really mature, and what it is a simplification of the routing protocols and the difficult things to configure. 10 years ago, you had to have a CCIE to have PFR or performance-based routing, but now you can do that with a simple overlay SD-WAN network and don't worry about the transport underneath. But we are seeing a lot of services and requests for maybe services that aren't quite right. And as we dig into that application of follow the data, we find out that, well, maybe we should shift to this other type of product or something that's a little more elegant. Low latency requests is something that's really big right now. People are trying to get their data to the destination or retrieve it as quickly as possible. And so we need to understand, is this something that can afford the jitter? Can it afford the latency? Do we design this architecture to that, or do we need just blasting fast wave circuits like you're talking about? So depending on the requirements from the business and the outcome that we're looking for, that's exactly where we're going to be from an engineering perspective. We just want to understand what the outcome that you're looking for, and then we'll place the technology that's going to work the best for that.
Yeah, and I saw a comment, which is a great comment, right? Is, hey, I got some customers, man, all they got is DSL, IDSL, ADSL. First of all, SD-WAN doesn't care about the transport. Pair DSL with 4G, pair 4G with satellite with DIA, DIA with broadband. It doesn't care because it's going to take that application, it's going to reroute in real time around those anomalies, right? But to that point, some customers don't have a choice of that, what kind of circuit can I get in a specific location, because it is location specific. However, there are alternatives, right? You can do Starlinks, you can do Viasats, you can do 4G, 5G, you can do SIMless, you can do eSIMs. There's a million ways to create that transport. Not everybody, Britain, gets a capability of doing 10 gig waves, right? We had one the other day. It was a dark fiber request out in the middle of a cornfield that didn't even exist. So sometimes there are purple squirrels out there, meaning the customer is going to ask you guys for a specific thing that absolutely doesn't exist for their environment. But when you bring the Telarus engineering guys to the table, we're going to find them alternatives. You can do this or you can do that. You can do this or you can do that. But remember, everything's connected to everything. If you do this, it might break that piece of the puzzle, so watch out. If you do this, it might break that piece of the puzzle, so watch out, right? Back to the IoT stuff. I got sensors, I got refrigerant sensors, I got HVAC sensors. Do I need to run those over my 100 meg, 10 gig DIA pipes? Not necessarily, right? I got my TV screens for my digital displays in my healthcare operator that's just running, ads and content or whatever. Do I need to run that through my firewall and eat a capacity? No. So back to that idea of split tunneling or network splicing, we now have that availability to take that specific application by application by application, and tell it what mode of transport, and also tell it how I need it to behave over that mode of transport, right?
I
Yeah,
just
I
need to
think,
figure out how to work in Purple Squirrel.
I
Purple
love it.
squirrel.
That's
That
that's
was a good one.
that's what I learned today.
That doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, I think this idea, and again, it's the concept that, the way we use our networks has changed so much over the last couple of years, right? This idea of a purpose-built network for what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, the past we would just throw, and I was, guilty of this in a previous role where I was a bandwidth seller, right? Primarily, you just throw bandwidth at it, right? And you try to solve a problem with bandwidth. That's not the best approach now. And especially as we're seeing the emergence of things like IoT and other things that are out there in the ecosystem that require different modes of transport. It's not enough just to put up a big pipe with some Wi-Fi hotspots and you're good. This purpose-built custom type setup is really the direction we're going. And I think, again, advanced solutions require advanced networks. And Brenton, I want you to just sort of touch on, when we were having our prep call for this, you talked about a lot of times the network is somewhat the afterthought, right? We start talking about what we want to do. We want to put together a proposal for, we're putting in some CX solution or large cloud play. And we almost come to the network at the end of it, when in reality, the network is the foundation that keeps that whole engine running. So talk a little bit about that, Brenton, and how partners and tech advisors can, make sure that they're checking that box when they start to have those conversations about those other advanced solutions.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I think the approach maybe sometimes is, hey, SD-WAN's the fix it all. It's going to come in and just fix everything. However, you still have to do that top-down networking architecture, find out what the applications are in the business, what's critical. 5 years ago, voice was always, almost always at the top. But what we're seeing as a trend is maybe voice isn't the most important type of communication anymore. So understanding where the servers live, where the application is, following that data, what's really the highest requirement, then you can back into the architecture that's required. There's going to be different requirements for an environment that's heavy branch or heavy data center. So depending on what that is, you're going to back into the architecture and how the lines and how the services need to be conditioned. If you don't have really many real-time and TCP retainment type failovers required, well, another SD-WAN solution might be available and easier to use. These large SD-WAN backbone providers, they do a fantastic job at retaining your information, retaining that those circuits and the WAN in a way that's just top tier. But honestly, it's not required in every situation. So just understanding where the applications are, what is the most important to the client, and also getting the data back to make good decisions about the network going forward. So the telemetry that's coming in, one of the things is reporting has really improved over the last years, and it's great to see that. Now, what I feel like that's going to transform is now AI can get its hands on some of this information and make better reports, better decisions, and make it easier for all of us to orchestrate a network, to tune the network from a failover perspective, that conditioning component. But back to the point, Graham, not every scenario has the same. It's not, hey, we'll just slap SD-WAN on here and it's going to fix everything. There's many subversions of SD-WAN that need to be considered depending on the applications that are being used.
Yeah, and some clients are siloed still, right? I got my security guys, I got my network guys, I got my voice guys, and they all have different requirements. But if we don't know holistically everybody's requirements in all those divisions, it's really hard to say, oh, throw a Meraki at it, throw a Cradle Point at it. Now, the manufacturers, Palo Alto's the best, Cisco's the best, Meraki's, blah, blah, blah. There's no such thing as one size fits all for organizations anymore, right? What if I'm an international player and I've got locations in mainland China and my latency is because of the Chinese firewall, the inspection traffic, right? Is there a way to reroute those applications around that Chinese inspection zone to reduce that latency? Yeah. Is that SD-WAN? Yeah. It's just a different color, purple squirrel, right? It's just a different kind of SD-WAN, right? So we need to understand.
It's a striped one.
Yeah. I saw something in the chat. Why is voice no longer the big time application? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Depends on the use case. Right. What if I'm a Waffle House? Voice is an application, but I'm not making money over voice. So if a call drops or it's just failover, failback methodology, that's probably tolerable. It's probably good enough. But we need to determine what are those money making applications? What are the business critical applications and how do they need to behave? Well, then determine what kind of SD-WAN. But to Graham's point and Britton's point, we still need to transport data somehow. So back to that advanced networking is what applications need what kind of network, and then that network plugs into what kind of SD-WAN for what kind of applications, right? The pieces of the puzzle, they all come together. And Graham, you mentioned SASE and CASB and SD-WAN or whatever. A lot of companies out there buy something and then buy more something, especially in cybersecurity, and then they have overlapping, conflicting technologies. Right? Maybe you already have MDR and EDR and SEM and SOC and SOAR in the platform that you bought 2 years ago. Maybe you didn't, right? Are you service chaining multiple platforms or is this an all-in-one, right? So it really all depends on that use case. But I always say, keep in mind, the number one thing that these customers are thinking about is risk and money. How do I decrease risk? How do I protect my money? Well, what applications make you money? Those are your business critical applications.
Yeah, and to your point, that may or may not be voice, right? But voice is just one application that rides on the network, and I think each business is going to be different based on what they prioritize. So I think that's really what we're getting at here. We're not saying voice is dead. A lot of chat comments on that in the chat. And SD-WAN's not dead either yet, but we're working on it. And so all of these applications function a little bit differently. And it's really key to dig in with your customers and find out what's important to them and what's important to the way they do business. And we want to make sure that the network is built to support those things. Again, it's no longer a one size fits all where we're just dropping in a large data pipe and kind of going from there. And Josh, I love what you talked about is this sort of siloed organization, because I think that is something that we're seeing a lot. One part of the organization will pursue some kind of initiative to maybe hey, we want to revamp our whole CCaaS platform or whatever. And they don't come back to the other parts of the organization and ask, hey, do we have the network to support what we're trying to do over here, right? We want to go to the cloud. We want to do this. Do we have the network to support those initiatives? And everybody knows what happens if you build a house on a shaky foundation, cracks in the wall, things collapse, right? So that network as the foundation of all these other technologies is really key. So we want to make sure we're bringing that conversation back to the network when we can, regardless of what other applications we're putting in place, because a bad network is going to mean poor performance in a lot of these other areas.
Yeah, no, great. I'll give you an example. I'm on a call yesterday morning with one of our partners. And it's a large organization, bunch of hotels throughout the globe or whatnot. And the conversation was around network, right? Internet service providers and SD-WAN. And when we got on the call, we started having this conversation about what are you actually trying to do? What are your business critical applications? Why do you even need SD-WAN, right? Why is it just fail over to 4G going to be just fine, right? You guys are a bunch of hotels. Who cares? Once we got through about 20 minutes of the conversation, more players from the end user organization started piping up, right? Originally, we were just talking to the network guy, right? Internet circuits and SD-WAN, let's keep my circuits up. But then we determined, oh, wait a minute, we're going to do a cloud contact center for this hotel. So this is going to end up being a five nines, a nice in contact, a Serenova, or whatever. And that's when the tails turn. How do you need that application to behave? Do you require 100% perfect voice uptime? Can you afford jitter, packet loss, latency, calls drop? And the answer was, oh my God, no. But the first comment was, I need SD-WAN and circuits. Let's look at a checkpoint or a Cisco Meraki or whatever. And then it was like, wait a minute, that's not going to put your UCaaS and your CCaaS application at 100% uptime. So to them, what was their business critical application for that conversation? It was voice. And their original thought of SD-WAN and circuits, that's not going to cut it, fellas. This is a totally different SD-WAN animal now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what I love about the position that we're in. We're just in a place where we can adapt. We have the tools and the suppliers and the technology that we can adapt to the requirements of a customer. If you go in and speak to an IT department they have a lot of expertise in the security side, and they have sunk costs from, edge security. A SASE play, obviously may not be the right path for them, and vice versa. If they're strong on the networking side and they need help on the security side, we can augment the customer and meet them where they need to be, and just understand their challenges from the forefront and show them the trends that are happening and help them with their networking and that foundational aspect. We don't have a bunch of square pegs in our back pocket. We have all the pegs, so we can understand the situation, just be curious and why they want to make these changes, and then drive forward from there.
Yeah, no company's out there saying, I want to give somebody money for more internet. I want to give somebody more money for routers and switches. The answer is, and Graham, we were talking about this earlier, right? The art of the big deal. How do you guys get these wrap accounts where you started with, I need a circuit, and then you dropped it on a router that turned into a SASE, that turned into CASB, that turned on a full cybersecurity, that turned into big wave pipes? How did these small deals, I need a couple of circuits and a cradle point, turn into, how are these $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in MRR? That's how. Because everything's connected to everything, right, Brittany? We asked that, what applications are we talking about? We're talking about voice. Checkpoint's not going to do it. Cisco's not going to do it. Meraki's not going to do it. Palo's not going to do it. What devices and what technologies have you already invested in, Mr. Customer? Well, I'm a Fortinet shop, I'm a Cisco shop, I'm a Palo shop, or whatever. Sometimes what they've already invested in has the capability of doing what they want for advanced routing, right? Advanced networking, just by a different configuration or activating things like SD-WAN or whatever. Other times, it's no longer a fit. Maybe it was a fit last year, but now you're going cloud voice. Now you're going CCaaS. Now, my favorite one, now you're doing desktop as a service in a international player or a national player, and I've got multi-regions. Well, are we going to backhaul all of that traffic to LA to support my guys in Florida? Or now we going to do edge compute and let those guys in Florida connect to the nearest pop in Florida instead of going all the way back to LA and all the way back, creating more latency, right? There's always going to be something different, and there's always a business driver, what I call the unknowns, that sometimes we're not privy to on that initial customer call, right? And that's what kind of Britton and I and the rest of the engineering team do, Graham. You hear us all the time is, why? Why do you need that circuit? Why do you need that speed? What is the application? How do you need the application to perform and behave? Where are the workloads? Where are the users connecting to those workloads? In those workloads, what are the users allowed to access in those workloads? Can they access business critical top secret data from their home office or a physical office? Can they also access top data critical information from a public Wi-Fi at a Starbucks or an airport? Well, the answer is no. So now we talk things like ZTNA. But it all comes together, and that's how you turn I need a circuit request into no, we're doing a full-on wrap account that satisfies the network guy, the telecom guy, the cybersecurity guy, the data center guy, right? It all has to connect. And if it doesn't, what happens is these customers will buy the correct product in the incorrect sequence 100% of the time.
Yeah.
We have to help
I'm a big analogy guy, and I love talking about, you could have the shiniest, coolest car in the world, but if you don't have great roads to drive it on, it's going to be a bumpy experience, right? And so we just want to make sure that, when we're having these conversations, we're checking the box. Do we have what we need at the network level to support all the other stuff that we're trying to do as a business? And I think we want to make sure that conversation is coming in through our team. We're here to help you guys with that. We're here to have those conversations and make sure that you're setting up your customers for success when they implement those other advanced solutions. Yeah. So I want to change gears here a little bit. Josh, you sort of touched on it, so I'll start with you. The other thing we're starting to see is, you talked about convergence earlier, right? How everything fits together, everything's a piece. Cybersecurity is a big, huge thing nowadays. I mean, it has been for a number of years. Tons of our partners I know focus on those areas. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening at the network level with cybersecurity, specifically how SASE and cybersecurity are kind of meeting to really give customers a fully comprehensive solution.
Yeah. So let's go to marketing terms. I said SD-WAN's not a thing. SASE. That doesn't mean you've got attitude, girl. Secure Access Service Edge. But what does that mean? And then CASB and ZTNA. Let's kind of go through that, right? SD-WAN, failover, failback methodology, connect multiple locations to multiple locations. Bingo, right? Throw a firewall on that thing? Boom. Now I'm a Secure Access Service Edge. I'll give you an example. Fortinet is great at this. Fortinet is a great marketing engine, 42 different product lines. Everything's called Forti something. Okay, so I go get a FortiGate. What is a FortiGate, Britton? It's a router that says Fortinet on it. Is it? What if I turn on my next-gen firewall on that FortiGate? What is it now? Oh, now it's a Fortinet. Well, if I had FortiGates as routers at multiple locations and I turned on the next-gen firewall functionality, did I just become FortiSASE? Yes. Secure Access Service Edge, right? So you still have a lot of players out there, your Checkpoints, your Palos, your Ciscos, your Fortinets that service chain multiple products together to create SASE and CASB and ZTNA. But a lot of times it's still separate user interfaces. A lot of times it's multiple boxes in order to accomplish this. Other SASE players have come to the table and said, now, wait a minute. We are SD-WAN and we are application conditioning and controls or whatever. But no, we're a cybersecurity company. We're going to start at the Security Operations Center as a service. We're going to add in security event management. We're going to add in managed detection and response, endpoint detection and response, next-gen firewall capabilities, boom, boom. And we're going to allow these customers to just kind of pick and choose ad hoc. Because what happens if, hey, I was already invested in Rapid7 for MDR, and I was already invested in CrowdStrike for EDR. My contracts don't come up for another 2 years. You're not going to throw that in the garbage. But if you start with these platforms as a service, these SASE, CASB engines, I can start with just SD-WAN, bandwidth conditioning. And later, my Palos come due. I don't have a firewall project. I activate the next-gen firewall. And then my endpoint detection and response platform, my CrowdStrike, my SentinelOne or whatever comes due. Do I got to go renegotiate those contracts or re-up? Or can I go on my orchestrator and just activate that control? Now I got MDR, EDR, right? So that's the beauty of the platforms as a service, right? Your Katos, your Ariakas, your Versus, your open systems, right? There's a lot of these guys. But my point is, people get afraid of these because it sounds like, oh my God, complex, gigantic, expensive. No. These are kind of pay-as-you-grow type of situations. You don't have to rip and replace everything. You can start small and grow into the organization. The beauty, though, when you're doing these all-in-ones is all telemetry. North, south, east, west, all go into one correlating engine. What if I go out and I buy Fortinet, turn on the firewall, then I go bolt on a VeloCloud for my SD-WAN, and then I go get endpoint detection and response from a CrowdStrike or whatever? How is all that telemetry correlating into a single interface, north, south, east, west traffic, where my data analysts, my data forensics see everything simultaneously in one? It's virtually impossible to do that. Service chaining is not the wrong thing, because again, islands in organizations, right? And sometimes we have to do that. But these other players have just created this elegance and the simplicity of, hey man, now you want MDR, EDR? Push the button and all telemetry goes into a single source of truth, right? Just clean and elegant so these guys don't have to be monster cybersecurity strategists, right? They just activate the controls and the more they activate, the bigger the ROI. Because I'm no longer service chaining. Keep in mind, everybody on this call, including your customers, the number one thing on the planet, the number one asset on the planet is time. Your time and your customer's time. If you can save your customer's time by not having to log into multiple user interfaces to see what's going on in their organization, and you can give them a single pane of glass, you just saved me time. Time is money, right? So there's a lot of platforms out there. How do I know which one? That's when you kind of involve us and say, listen, this is our thought, this is our theory, what am I missing? What are the pieces of the puzzle that need to be connected or not connected? What assets and investments do I have to protect so I don't have to rip and replace, right? How do I integrate all these things? And that's where we come in, is we help that client understand potential risks and make sure that we're doing the right things and putting the right things in the right sequence at the right time.
And Josh, I like the aspect about, ZTNAs being integrated into all of the networking, not just from an SRA perspective or a remote worker, if they're out and trying to protect those applications, that next generation VPN, that's being spread across all of the network components. So
Yeah.
integrating that telemetry from an MDR, SOC, SIM perspective back into the network so we can have better intelligence. This kind of open telemetry feel that we're getting from and the stories from all of the suppliers, I think is a progression in the way of just knowing the identity of your users, where they're going, and to either be able to block them, allow them, and not just from that CASB side, but anywhere in the network. It doesn't matter if you're going to a printer, doing that ZTNA aspect. Hey, are you allowed to do this based on your identity or group? That tighter integration is just something that I think all the suppliers and all the customers are asking for and wanting to get more out of. And it's good to see kind of this kumbaya almost
Yeah.
telemetry,
But to that point,
open API process happening.
But to that point, right, this is advanced networking class, right? That's why we need to understand the applications and the workloads, and not only applications and workloads, but where are they? If all of my workloads are in my on-prem data centers, in my closet, on my servers and storage, all this other stuff, right? That is a different way to do things like secure remote access. That's a different way to do things like next-gen firewalls, right? Ingress, egress traffic into my hub. I need next-gen firewalls, all this other stuff. But wait a minute. What if I went 100% cloud adoption and every one of my applications are SaaS-based cloud apps? And all of my users just go directly to those cloud apps.
That even more creates a need for ZTNA and control and being able to offboard and onboard employees in a way that's seamless, crisp, and ubiquitous. Every single time you need that same template to happen, onboard, offboard. It just makes, from a policy perspective and a framework, it's the approach has changed. None of these concepts are new. These have been around for 15, the identity-based routing and things like they've been around forever, but orchestrating it into a tool that makes it simple for customers to use instead of gigantic platforms that take, hundreds of code.
And now I've got to worry about same thing when it was on-prem, right? Like you said, it's theoretical design. The architecture hasn't changed. It's just a matter of where the workloads live, right? I saw a question in the chat real quick on ZTNA, right? Basically secure remote access, but also accessibility and authentication. I'm going to authenticate who I am, where I am, what workloads I'm allowed to access, where physically I'm allowed to access, where those hosts are, right? I've got players right now, large multi-site organizations that were hundreds of Meraki's, hundreds of Fortinets, hundreds of Palo Altos from a firewall standpoint that I went all cloud apps. Why do I have on-prem firewalls? So now we're doing not a firewall replacement project, is drop in an SD-WAN appliance to link, aggregate, and load balance your ISP connections, right? But all your cloud apps are cloud apps, man. That's ZTNA. I don't even need local firewalls anymore, right? If everything is cloud, why do I have on-prem firewalls? Why am I making people come to me and then go back out there? It doesn't make any sense anymore. So, but the theoretical architecture is the same. I still need intrusion detection, intrusion protection, unified threat management, rules-based access, identity-based access, privileged access management. I still need all these things, but I don't need to buy them, stick them in a box with blinky lights and stick them in my wiring closet anymore, right? I just need to activate a subscription so now Josh Hazelhurst can get into the workloads he's allowed to get into the workloads, where he's allowed to, how he's allowed to. Back to the Cisco game. Cisco loves selling product, right? I go Cisco Umbrella and Cisco Ice and a Cisco Firepower and a blah, 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 blah. Pretty soon I got 11 Cisco products. In today's world, I don't need to buy all that anymore, man. I just need to get a licensed subscription. In that use case, a ZTNA platform, AppGates, Alkira's, keep going. Palo Prisma Access, Checkpoint Harmony, Zscaler. I mean, there's a dozen of these guys. By the way, no one size fits all on those either, right? But we need to help these customers create that simplification and elegance. They're afraid. Oh my God, I'm used to my own stack. I'm used to all this. But now I got all cloud apps, which means the theory's still there. The tools still need to live somewhere, but they don't need to live physically in your wiring closet anymore.
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing, right, if you look at surveys asking, hey, how do customers want to buy? And a lot of our large suppliers have paid a lot of attention to that, which is why you're seeing them sort of go broad with their product set. But Josh, you talked about they're scared, right? I mean, you've got your IT team that's scared there. Meanwhile, you've got the CFO over here saying, I don't want 1,500 vendors. I want a platform where I can do everything from one platform. And that's a challenge, sort of balancing that, where you've got those two things back and forth. I know Doug's coming on here, which means we're running short on time. A ton of stuff we didn't even get to here today. But Josh, maybe just sort of touch quickly, and then Brenton, you two, on this idea of buying from a single vendor. And somewhere between 80 and 90% of customers surveyed said that they are minimizing the amount of vendors that they deal with, and this idea of vendor sprawl, they're moving away from it. Challenging in a world that we're describing here.
Yeah, so let's do this for real quick. Let's take our technology hat off and put our risk management hat on. There's still two rules of thought here. Service chain with multiple vendors, I don't have all my eggs in one basket. If I have all my eggs in one basket and something breaks, oh my God. Here's the rub. If you want a service chain and you have a large IT staff that can control all of those applications and all of those portals, fine, service chain all you want, best practices, do your thing, get SEM, get SOC, get SOAR, all that, you're good, right? If you're lean IT, I'm gonna give you an example, Graham. You just give me 13 portals and 11 boxes that I have to manage before I go home for work, before I go home, I can't. You gave me too many tools. This is what's called toolset sprawl. And that's where these all-in-ones come in is, hey man, we still need all 17 tools, but I need an easier, more elegant way to manage them.
Yeah, and I'm seeing very similar conversations happening. We'll meet with an IT group. They're systems engineers. The IT team is they want to keep their infrastructure up and their internal services up. They may not have the security expertise that they need. They may not have the networking expertise that they need. So these all-in-one simple orchestrated applications that they can overlay on transport just makes it so much more simple. And reducing those point solutions not only does reduces the amount of complexity and expertise that you need, but just footprint, power, all the portals, like Josh stated, just having one place that you can go to get the answers that you need is just, it's simplicity. That's what we all want in our lives. You want to reduce the amount of complexity and components. And sometimes there's cases where you're going to have to do a service chain because of the business requirement or the situation. But having a strategy, looking forward to, okay, we do want to get to this reduced footprint overall in 1, 2, 4, however long that roadmap looks like.
Yeah, and here's the easy button, Graham. I know we said a lot of things, and sometimes it can get complex and kludgy or whatever. Here's the easy button. Mr. Customer, you wanted to buy bandwidth. Mr. Customer, you want SD-WAN. Mr. Customer, you want a router or a switch or a firewall, whatever that happens to be. Can I bring my engineer on this call? And we will uncover what are the applications, where are they at, where do they reside, how they need flow, blah, blah. We'll do all this for you.
Yeah, there's a million things we didn't get to in this thing. We had a laundry list of stuff, but there's a lot going on in the network space, and I think that sort of illustrates why we've put an enhanced focus on it this year. Doug, over to you, man. Thanks. What do we see in the any questions we want to highlight? Tried to get a few.
We did cover a lot today. There's a lot of questions that are out there. I'm just going to try to summarize a couple of them quickly. The easy button really touched on one of them. Sam had asked earlier, where do we obtain these network qualifying questions that we want to be sure and ask? Bring in that engineer. You're going to have to look at this on a specific sort of a basis. I did want to go back to one thing because we've talked about a number of different types of technology. And there's a little bit of a question as to how realistic some of them are and how much of it is marketing hype these days. How can we help clients get past the marketing hype that they're hearing and focus on the true data needs that they may have?
Yeah, I think.
Great question.
Yeah,
and
that's a great
question. Every day, Britton, you see it every day too. Hey man, I want to buy this product or I want to buy that product. One of the powers of working with TSDs like us is we only bring out those suppliers, those OEMs, those manufacturers that are vetted, have a true proven track record, have use cases, have wins. We do have bleeding edge tech, but we've got proven bleeding edge tech. There's new tech out there every day that we're not going to bring to the table. Just because some marketing slick said, oh, I'm the next greatest and best. I've never sold to anybody and I got two employees. Nah, we're not bringing those players to the table. We're only going to bring the best of the best that are perfect for the specific use case. And that includes sales, support, operations, day 2 support, installation, whatever it needs to be for that use case, right? I got a Netscope bought a company that does SD-WAN, right? I don't think they sold a single product in the US ever. So would I go pitch that to one of these guys' customers? Absolutely not. Does it work? Theoretically, but I'm not going to put my mom's company on that thing. You know what I mean? So everything is proven. Everything is tried. And that is a big risk. Think about your customer. How does he know if this is proven and vetted and real, or is this just some marketing fluff and I subscribe to something that I'm never going to use?
Yeah, I think that's the key, right? Is that these guys see hundreds of opportunities over the course of a month, get a chance to sort of, take a run on a number of different technologies. So trying to sift through what's going on, bring it to our team. They're here to help. They've seen it. They've looked under the hood on most of these things and can really help guide you as far as making sure you're putting the best foot forward with your customer.
Yeah, and a lot of times, just want to interject it, a lot of times you're going to have multiple engineers on those calls. Britt and I work on multiple contracts and accounts together because I'm doing the SD-WAN and the firewall and maybe the ZTNA. Then, but Burton's coming over the top. Do you need RIP and IEGRP and BGP and jumbo frames? And should this be a wave or a point-to-point? Man, I don't know that stuff. I don't want to know that stuff, right? But Britain does, so we bring Britain to those tables so we can make sure we're uncovering all of our bases, right?
I love
BGP.
I love BGP.
I know you do.
Do this.
Protocols.
Hey,
I don't want to know
one
this
other
stuff.
question I want to get to before we get too far away here. Opportunities vary by marketplace. From your perspective, obviously bandwidth's still a huge issue, but there seems to be a little bit of a controversy as to whether or not bandwidth opportunities are, or bandwidth solutions, I should say. Are we maxing out in certain areas in terms of what is available for bandwidth? Zachary is saying that he's seeing a lot of good deals on large bandwidth. You think that's really because of we have an oversupply in certain areas, or is the oversubscription ratio changing?
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one. And I think, really what you're seeing is, back in the day with the answer was always throw bandwidth at it, right? And that becomes a challenge in areas where there's not a lot of good bandwidth options. So it's really key. Each business has to be looked at individually to be like, what applications are important to the business? And let's make sure that your network is set up to support those applications. So the costs of things like SD-WAN and those types of appliances has come down so much that it allows smaller organizations to implement those types of solutions to maximize the resources that they have. And I think that's really what it's all about. Not everybody can go out there and afford to throw a bunch of bandwidth at stuff. They need to make every dollar count. And because of that, you need to make sure you've got the right infrastructure, the right solution in place to enable that. And I think that's really what it comes down to. Each market is different. You're right. Things aren't available in every market, but a lot of these technologies are, and they allow the business, regardless of where they are, to optimize their spend and their network for what they need.
Yeah, and sometimes you got to be careful. Back to financial risk, right? I'm going to go get a couple of 10 gig sticks, and now I want an SD-WAN. And hey, by the way, that's 20 gig maximum throughput capacity. Those SD-WAN tunnel licenses are going to eat you up. Did you realize that? Maybe I didn't need 20 gig. Maybe 100 meg would have been just fine, So we got to worry about the financial risk too.
And I'm seeing a large wave of services going to data centers and connecting data centers together and extending LANs. I have more 100 gig and 400 gig requests than I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And, making sure the client understands what control they have of those services. That's kind of like plain dumb type of networking, but it's really important to get the architecture right and what's going to go into that. These AI projects that clients are having, they need really, really big, super low latency circuits. And we can do that. If it's connecting just to the nearest AWS region, there's certain architectures that play better in the latency world than others. So again, back to the big deal and how we can help with that. understanding what the project looks like, what the client is trying to have that business outcome, and we put the right technology in place.
Yeah, needs versus wants, right, Graham? You said just throw bandwidth at it. Well, wait a minute. What's that application? You're asking for a chocolate cake, but maybe a small strawberry cupcake is actually what you need.
Right. Yeah.
Money, time, and voice is still viable. All great stuff.
Bingo.
Graham, last word to you. Anything else?
Yeah, no, just I think just to wrap this up, I mean, there's a lot going on in this space, right? We didn't even get a chance to really touch on the impact of wireless and what's going on there. Lots going on. Please bring our team in. There's so much opportunity to uncover when we have these conversations, when we really start to dig in with these customers, and it helps you put your best foot forward, right? When you're selling them solutions, your name relies on those solutions. You want to make sure those solutions are supported by the right network. It all begins and ends with the network. If the network's not there to support what they're trying to do, there's going to be challenges, and nobody wants that.
Absolutely true. Graham, Josh, Britton, thank you so much. Terrific presentation, fabulous discussion. I'm sure there will be a lot more questions coming on. Get these folks involved and the Telarus teams. They will help you. Thanks, guys. Great presentation.
Thank you.